Hi all, it's me Aki from Brainforth, and this is set 29 part 3. And I'd like to discuss telepathy and the unified mind. Because through biology we've proved that we all come from a single organism, on this planet at least, and this single organism has made choices that it doesn't approve of. It's allowed things to breed through it that it doesn't think are good or are of the thing that it wants to. This is called rape. And to be telepathic, you have to be able to contact your previous selves before their life plan was ruined. So to talk to someone who has had their life plan destroyed and become a part of somebody else's life plan is always quite hard. It's hard to talk to people in trauma and to try to get them to open up, and that is why not all humans can communicate with all other humans intuitively and have telepathy. Telepathy is mostly for civilizations that try to keep their individual members' life plans as uninterrupted by outsiders. So it's difficult for a person or country or an institution that has a history billions of years long that is riddled with violence and with actions that harm the self. And such a creature will have significant difficulty and will evolve significant barriers to keeping its previous life forms from contacting it. These are called diseases and bacteria. These are things that you were in the past but don't want to be anymore. But to be able to talk to your own past and future, you have to have these things with you, if for nothing else than to know that you don't want them around you. So we've made a lot of decisions in our historic past to make sure that we remember things we don't want, and not so much to remember things that we do want. So from that point of view, it's fairly simple to see why telepathy isn't a human attribute at the moment. It's an attribute that is reserved for those who are in contact with their own tribe. It is reserved for the primitive and those who seek to understand the primitive, and it takes a long time to educate your mind to be relaxed, to not attempt to hear but still be able to hear, because your attempt to hear and your attempt to become more telepathic is almost always leading you away from becoming telepathic, because you are telepathic. You can't relearn writing if you already know writing. It is a counterproductive activity. It is much more difficult to relearn an attribute that you already know than it is to simply have an attribute. So I'm not very telepathic, but I am telepathic. I've been working at it for a long time now, and I sometimes sense things like when people are about to punch me or when things are about to go south in a region. And I have occasionally had people talk to me and in other words call me over the telepathic phone when they are doing something and I shouldn't worry, or they are doing something and I should know about it. It's clearly from a unified mind or a previous life form, and not from our current mind or a mind that seeks to advance to the future. It's clearly from a mind of the modern, or rather pre-modern era. It is clearly from a mind that tries to keep itself away from harming. To me, it seems like telepathy is an attribute for societies that are more connected with their individual members than it is for a society that seeks to give its audience or individual members individual rights. So telepathy is also fairly against art, because what one person considers art is almost always harmful to somebody else. So they don't really use telepathy in art, but they use it for communication about art, in that telepathy seems to be limited to the spreading of art and not for the making of art. It seems that making art telepathically or in an induced state leads to art that is so difficult to conceptually grasp yourself around that it becomes mean art, one can even say. Art that is riddled with negative entities that are trying to do things to you, because that is the form of art. It is always filled with entities that are trying to harm you, because art is about other forms of life trying to gain an understanding about you and trying to get you to understand them. So art is one of those things that isn't a very telepathic ability. It's more towards making sure that the people involved in the process are all doing well, and for that art isn't really suited. I don't know if there's anything else to say about this, other than that it seems odd that modern biological community, the biologists, see so little reason to believe in telepathy, even though it's clear that it's from the single mind that they've been in the past. And this is why alien contact is so dramatic, because those disease barriers that you've built up for your body to be able to live, to understand these previous invaders and previous forms of life that you don't want to talk to now, getting your body to understand a new form of hostility and a new form of life is completely mind-bogglingly scary. So I can understand why it would be for somebody who is used to the idea that biology shows that we are separate beings instead of biology showing that we are the one being, to be against the idea of telepathy, but I don't know more than that about it myself. It's just conjecture on my part. The way I see it, as our technology advances, we will become more telepathic again as we let go of the traumas of the past and become who we were meant to be. Instead of kind of what life made us, as we gain the abilities to control life, we will eventually evolve towards a direction of being more unified and being more friendly with one another, because we don't really need the barriers of hostility, because our bodies can take us away from enemies faster than the enemies can catch up, because that is the speed of light. So I believe that telepathy is something that more primitive cultures have more, and this is because it just seems to be an ability that is for the community's coherence. It seems like almost a bacterial function that seems designed to keep the society in check or in form. So yeah, the way I see telepathy is that it's the one mind of the first bacteria or the first amoeba talking to itself again. So it's like residual spirit left over from long ago that is doing the channeling for what used to be its own parts talking to itself, are now different parts of itself talking to other parts of itself, or things that are no longer itself. So when the first amoeba decomposes completely, our planet will lose its own initial telepathy completely, but that will not happen unless all the life on the planet that has evolved from the planet starts to disintegrate completely as well. So for our point of view, it's something that we should have indefinitely. It's not an ability that somebody should be able to take from you. Spain and China are communicating quite a lot now that I'm looking at this map. It seems China likes to talk to Europe through Spain. Don't know why. So anyway, that's all about this update for telepathy. And I'll probably make one more update about the European Union, and that'll be all for today. And I hope we all develop telepathy. Start to pay attention to those little signals and mistakes when people speak and start to think about what they mean and so on.